Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, KP Kaltza. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Healthy Conversations. I have with me again my good friend and colleague, KP Kaltza, who is also a former president of the American Herbalist Guild like me. And KP, welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephen. Good to see you again.
Yeah, and both of us have worked with the Guild in trying to be in the leadership. And one of the reasons why we've done this is because we both recognize the need for better training and better knowledge with herbalists. So, KP, why don't you talk a little bit to the idea of why do we need to, look for, develop professional herbalists in this country? What is the thing that we're trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah, well, in North America, we had about a 60 or 70-year dark ages period starting close to the beginning of the 1900s and going all the way up into the later half of the 1900s. It was completely obliterated for political reasons. And so there were a very small group of us, Stephen and I were among them, that were responsible for regenerating herbal medicine. And we all kind of independently became interested, found mentors, gradually met each other here and there, and eventually, got together, and the whole thing became much more professional. But we had to start the whole thing from nothing. So the people that we were learning from were honest to goodness, experienced clinicians who had gone to the last few years of the natural healing schools in the early 1900s and really knew what they were doing. They'd been practicing for 50 years by the time we found them. Most of these people, I was 18 years old when I started this, and most of the people I was studying with at that time, were 80 years old. But they were very glad that we finally found them, and they were just a treasure trove of information. So we saw things actually work in the real world and work very well. And we realized that we had to create an environment and educational institutions, and then all the other resources, books, courses, schools, all of that. That's all been accomplished now. It took about 50 years to do that, and now we have everything that we need. Herbal medicine is complex. It's a very in-depth and, of course, effective system of herbal medicine. But we have to distinguish it from folk medicine or grandma medicine or clan medicine, where typically you have a threefold characterization of these people, maybe formal, maybe not, but you have the average grandma who maybe knows a dozen herbs and a dozen ways to use each of them. That accounts for about 90% of the herbal medicine on the planet. Then the next is a clan herbalist who maybe knows 100 herbs and can treat virtually everything that comes along. That's another maybe 8%. And then you have the last 2% that are formally trained practitioners. And of course, that all had to be in other cultures initially, including Europe. There was an uninterrupted strain of herbalism that was being practiced there. We met those people and learned those things. So these were all people who had these formal kinds of systems. So we wanted to create that extra 2%, the people who really knew what they were doing, and it takes years to do that, and a lot of actual clinical experience. Just reading books isn't enough. You actually have to do it with real people. So if you're looking for very well-trained people that can handle anything that comes along and handle the really tough kinds of situations and the wonderful things that herbal medicine can do, you have to look for people who have met some standard. Now, in the American Herbalist Guild, that standard is a bunch of peers. So people apply to become a professional member and receive the credential RH, registered herbalist, that both Stephen and I carry. And we're evaluated by a group of our peers. That's still going on, and that organization has created hundreds of qualified herbalists. So that's a good credential to look for, that registered herbalist from the American Herbalist Guild. That's the only formal process like that in North America today. So that helps you know that the person that you're seeing is experienced, well qualified, has been reviewed by peers of equal stature. That doesn't mean that other people wouldn't be good, but frankly, most herbalists in North America are hobbyists. They haven't really seen very many people. They don't do extensive interviews and evaluations, and they don't do follow-ups, so they don't know if it really works very well. I had a funny situation the other day where I was talking to someone who said, I work the counter in an herb store, uh, taking people's money and counting up their orders and such. And I've seen thousands of people. I'm a very qualified herbalist for that reason. I said, well, how do you know what you suggest actually works? And he said, well, because they don't come back. Well, to me, that's more of an indication that it probably didn't work than that it did. But that's obviously just nonsense. Whether or not a person comes back or not has nothing to do with whether it worked. You have to do a formal follow up, talk to them about their symptoms, maybe do medical tests, whatever other things you need to do. And those people have to be well trained to be able to do that.
Well, obviously there's nothing wrong with the first kind of thing you talked about, with people who learn to do some home remedies for their family, for their kids, for different problems. I mean, I've always seen herbalism as kind of the medicine of the people anyway, because it is worldwide. But there is, of course, a difference between that and someone who, like you say, has really takes this seriously and does intake, does follow-ups, and tries to, get into really understanding the body and how the herbs work and so forth. And I don't want to discourage people from doing that. I mean, I started out that way, dabbling in
Of
this,
course.
and I think that's great to get started that way. But as you get into it, you find out that there's a whole lot more complicated things that you're dealing with than can be dealt with just a few simple home remedies. And that's where you need someone who's better trained and has more clinical experience. I actually got a lot of my initial experience in Utah. We had this herb movement that was kind of led by John Christopher as a resurgence of what had been a Utah tradition of herbal medicine. And I was, trained by a lot of those people who had started that resurgence, into herbal medicine. And I think they did good. But when I joined the American Herbalist Guild, it took me a step up in terms of associating with people who had a lot more in-depth understanding of herbal medicine. I was really grateful for that. And I encourage people, even if you're not a professional member, to just associate with the guild and get to know people.
Very
Um,
much so.
yeah, because I it's not that we're out to create a monopoly on herbalism, but we do want to see people who are more competent and well trained, who can handle more difficult situations. So I do recommend, if you're looking for someone who you actually can work with to help you with your health problems, a registered herbalist is a good place to start. Any other comments before we wrap this up, KP?
Well, you're absolutely right. And I couldn't be more supportive of family herbalism. It is the medicine of the people, and people, as long as there have been humans, there have been people eating plants for medicine. So I very much want to encourage that. The challenge is to figure out the difference between those levels. And if you're seeing someone for a serious kind of a condition, hopefully it's not someone who just graduated from a week of herb school and think they're an herbalist. We have this problem in our culture that we haven't defined herbalism, and so any given person can say there's an herbalist, and there's nothing to prevent them from doing that. So we see a lot of lesser trained herbalists, or people think that they know more than they really do, and they're kind of clogging up the system. And people then, the consumer doesn't know who to look for. So you have to look for some kind of credential or training or something, whether it's referrals from other people or something. The only formal one we have is the American Herbalist Guild. Now, we do have natural doctors of one kind or another, holistic medical doctors, naturopathic physicians. There are some naturopathic physicians who are excellent herbalists, absolutely. And in fact, they carry that same credential that Stephen and I have, or not, but they can be very good. The reality is that naturopathic physicians, and I teach at two naturopathic universities, and I teach herbalism there. Uh, these doctors in school learn 17 modalities. So there's a likelihood that their training is a mile wide and an inch deep. So people that really master herbalism that come out of that environment did it either before naturopathic school or maybe during or after, but they specialized in herbal medicine. So you have to figure out whether that's really the case. They all have a little bit of information. So there's that. And then anyway, it's hard to figure out any given situation because practitioners want clients. And if you go to a holistic medical doctor that took uh, a weekend workshop in herbal medicine, they'll say, sure, I know about herbs, come on in. So it's going to be
Yeah.
tricky.
Actually, I remember a medical doctor, and I forgot who he was, who was part of the guild, who spoke at one of our conferences. He said that herbalism is much more complicated than pharmacological medicine because, for instance, when he did, someone had depression, he gave them an antidepressant, most likely an SSRI. Now, as an herbalist, he finds out that there's a whole bunch of different underlying causes of depression and a whole bunch of different herbs that work on different kinds of depression. And you have to try to match the right herb with the right person who fitting their more unique picture. And that is really, I think, where herbalism excels, is because it's not just, here's a symptom, here's a cure. Good herbalism is looking at the whole picture of the person and recommending the herbs based on what we're seeing overall, including often non-physical traits, such as their mental and emotional state as well as their physical state. So I think herbalism is a lot harder to master in the long run because it's very holistic when it's done correctly.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, KP, for joining me. Appreciate your time. And if you'd like to learn more, there's links to my website and to KP Kaltz's website. He runs the International Integrative Education Institute and has some wonderful courses. If you want some really in-depth training, I try to teach more on the people who are trying to use commercial products and how to use them intelligently. He's really a good one for learning in-depth herbalism. So if you'd like to learn more, check out the links below, and thank you for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to catch future episodes of Healthy Conversations. Help us educate others by sharing this video, and please feel free to share your own thoughts, comments, and questions below. To learn more, check out the links below.